Hey, thanks for clicking on us here on FoxIllinois.com. Josh Getzoff alongside Nick Fabbrini, the head coach of University of Illinois men's ice hockey. And Fabo, it's a big time of year. Stanley Cup Playoffs starting. We're all excited about that. We're going to make some predictions right now for the East and West, and of course the Stanley Cup Final. Let's start in the East. I mean, the New York Rangers, defending Eastern Conference champions, 2015 President's Trophy winners, and what a reward! The Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round.
Yeah, not probably an ideal matchup for them, considering the Penguins have been one of the heavyweights of the league the last couple of years, but this year they've been banged up. Got some of their top defense, probably their two top defensemen, in Chris Letang and Olli Mata out of the lineup. Right. So they've struggled a lot this year, Pittsburgh. They got into the playoffs on the last day of the year, so I think the Rangers are going to handle them pretty easily in that series.
So you pick the Rangers in that series. We'll move on through the Metro. You have the Washington Capitals as the 2 seed, a team that I think a lot of people weren't necessarily sure where they'd be in the beginning of the year with Barry Trotz taking over. He's done his usual work with them, back as the 2 seed. And then, of course, the New York Islanders right there matching up with them as the 3 seed. And what can you say about them? The final year of Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, they're sending it out in style. Who do you have in that series?
I think that's going to be a great one. The Islanders have been great to watch this year. Really bolstered their lineup at the start of the year, picking up Johnny Boychuk and Nick Leddy from the Hawks. Right. And they've been great to watch. One of the best stories of the league this year, I think. But Washington, like you said, Barry Trotz has come in and just done a great job, and he's got those guys clicking on all cylinders. And, Alex Ovechkin had another outstanding year leading the league in goals. So I'm going to take the Capitals in that one.
Okay, so that sets us both up because I have the same 2 teams coming out of those 2 matchups. So we have the Rangers and the Capitals in the, semifinal of the Metro Division Championship, or the second round of the playoffs, depending on what you want to call it. They have so many different names now for this reformatted league. But, all right, so we'll have the Rangers and the Capitals. Who wins that series and why?
I think that's going to be a great one. Both teams have great goaltending, great defensemen, and outstanding forwards. A lot of depth in the forward lines also. I was thinking about the Rangers, but I think I'm going to take the Capitals in this one. I think it might be their year to break through and move into the Eastern Conference Finals.
See, I don't know if I agree that it's that great of a matchup. I feel like the Rangers are on another level because that defensive unit, Mark Stahl, Dan Girardi, Keith Yandel, Brian McDonough, the best one who I almost forgot right there. I feel like they have the weapons defensively to handle that Washington offensive attack. It may just come down to goaltending, and again, there I may think Henrik Lundqvist gets the edge over Braden Holtby, but we agree to disagree there. So you have the Caps, I have the Rangers. Now, as for the team they'll meet there, we'll go down to the Atlantic Division with the Montreal Canadiens taking on the Ottawa Senators. Ottawa, the Hamburglar leading them into the playoffs. They've had quite a run here. Does it continue against Montreal, or is this it for them?
That's a great question. I think Montreal had an outstanding year and probably have the best goalie in the league in Carey Price. But they have some big question marks with Max Pacioretty not being cleared to play yet. Their best player, probably. Right. So, in the playoffs, it's almost better to be hot than good, and the Senators are as hot as any team in the league, going like 22-1 in their last 23 or something like that. So, if Pacioretty can't come back, I think Ottawa's going to take that series.
All right, I'm going to go with Montreal just based on the sole fact that I think that they have, without Pacioretty, I think they still have more talent top to bottom. But like you said, the hot team, the confidence boost, I think that can make all the difference in the playoffs too. I wouldn't be surprised if Ottawa wins, but I'm going to go with Montreal on that one. All right, so then we get the other series out of the Atlantic Division. Tampa Bay Lightning, who, for whatever reason, consistently fly under the radar, but I think are as good as any cup contender you could put up to the table at this point in the season. They get the Detroit Red Wings. All they've done is make the playoffs the last 24 seasons. Yeah. So who do you got there?
I don't know if you remember, Josh, but going back to the start of the year, the Tampa Bay was my pick out of the Eastern Conference, and I'm sticking with them. I think they've done a great job this year, and are as deep as anybody up front, and Ben Bishop's really done a great job in net for them.
I think that's Tampa easily. I don't think Detroit has the depth to match up with Tampa. That team can roll 4 lines. Their defense is right up there with the league's best, and Ben Bishop's healthy this year, which could make all the difference for them. So you have Tampa and Ottawa. I have Tampa and Montreal. Who wins with Tampa and Ottawa, or do I even need to ask that question?
Tampa. Tampa's going to take it. I'm not picking against my guys, so I think this was their year.
I'm also going to pick Tampa. I think they'll get past Montreal and sets up a great Eastern Conference final if we do get it, because, as we remember, captain for captain last year between the Rangers and Lightning, you get that rematch with Martin St. Louis taking on Ryan Callahan and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Although there's so much more to both teams than those guys, but if that were to be the Eastern Conference final, I mean, who are you taking there? And is it the Lightning?
Like I said, I think it might be Tampa's year. I expect both conference finals to just be outstanding.
Yeah.
I think the league is as even this year as it's ever been. And with Lundqvist in net for New York or Holtby for Washington, depending on who makes it, it's going to be tough to beat those guys consistently over 7 games. But I think Tampa's got the offense to do it.
All right, so you have Tampa over Washington in the Eastern Conference Final. I'm going to go with the Rangers over Tampa, and I'm a Flyers fan, so it hurts me to pick the Rangers. It really does. I mean, I want to pick Tampa Bay, but the Rangers have, I think, the best roster in the NHL, and they've been there. They went there last year. They got to the Stanley Cup Final, lost to the Kings. They've done this before. I think the series could go 7 against Tampa easily. Like you said, it could be one of the best series of the season, but I think they win that series. So you have Tampa Bay in the Stanley Cup Final. I have the Rangers in the Stanley Cup Final from the East. Let's go to the West, and we start in the Central Division. St. Louis Blues, the champions of the Central Division. First time St. Louis fans have gotten to throw the word champions in front of their team for a long time. They get the Minnesota Wild, who a lot of people have as a trendy upset pick in that matchup, mainly I think because you could argue St. Louis has kind of taken over San Jose's role as the perennial playoff choke jobs. But who wins that series?
That's a tough one. Minnesota is similar to Ottawa in the fact that they got really hot at the end of the year, and that started with a pickup of a goaltender.
Yeah.
Devin Dubnyk was on his 3rd or 4th team in 4 years, I think, or less than 4 seasons, but has really found his game and has done a great job for him. But that being said, I think St. Louis is just going to have a little bit too much for him.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think St. Louis gets past Minnesota. They meet the winner of Nashville and Chicago. Of course, the Blackhawks get Patrick Kane back. They start that series tonight in Nashville. Old Flyers coach Peter Laviolette, so I have some allegiance to the Predators there. I'm sure he's a little bitter against the Blackhawks still, too, from 2010. But, that's going to be a great matchup. Peter Laviolette, another guy who's taken a team that was kind of a fringe team in Nashville and taking them to the top of the league. Yeah. How do you see that playing out?
It should be a great series. If Nashville can get consistent goaltending from Fabbrini and find some guys to score some timely goals, they could really give the Hawks some trouble. But if Patrick Kane can come back and be Patrick Kane, I think the Hawks are just going to have too much, and not only talent, but the experience. I think any sport, the NHL in particular, I think you need to learn how to win in the playoffs.
Right.
And I just don't think it's Nashville's time yet.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't think there's a better playoff acquisition you can get than Patrick Kane. I mean, this is a guy who won, I believe, the Conn Smythe Award just the last time the Hawks won the Cup in 2013. So he's been there before. If that is the matchup there, we both have St. Louis and Chicago. I think that could very well happen. They'd meet the team that came out of the Pacific side. So let's go to that real quick. Anaheim and Winnipeg are the 1-4 over there. Who are you taking in that matchup?
That's a tough one. I think Winnipeg is definitely built to win in the playoffs. They've gotten great goaltending this year, and Dustin Byfuglien's done a nice job for him on the back end, and Andrew Ladd, 2 former Hawks. Andrew Ladd's been a great player for him this year. So Anaheim tends to struggle in the playoffs, not only that group, but also Bruce Boudreau.
Yes.
And I think they've got some questions in net. So I think Winnipeg is going to take that series.
There's for sure a lot of pressure on Bruce Boudreau. You have the Jets. I'm going to go with Anaheim just solely because the 1 seed. I have to just hope that there's no upset there. But like you said, I mean, and you can only imagine how loud it's going to be in MTS Center for that first game in Winnipeg. It's going to be nuts.
I read today they sold out their playoff tickets in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah,
so
great for the league.
Yeah,
Winnipeg is back in the playoffs. And then another great matchup with 2 Canadian teams that I'm personally looking forward to going home from work tonight and watching. You got Calgary and Vancouver. Vancouver the 2, Calgary the 3 out of that Pacific Division. I think 2 teams in the beginning of the year, a lot of people figured probably not going to be part of the playoffs, but they've not only made it, but been pretty dominant in getting there.
Yeah, and both of them sustained losses to 2 of their better players.
Right.
The Flames lost Mark Giordano for the season back in February, I think, which I noticed because he was on my fantasy team this year, unfortunately. And the Canucks lost Ryan Miller for a big stretch. But Eddie Locke came in and stepped up and played great for him and is actually going to start for him tonight, I read.
Right.
For 2 teams that nobody was expecting much of, I think they both had great years. But I think Vancouver is going to take it here. I think Calgary's a little young. Vancouver's got some guys that have been there before and have got to be hungry. So
I agree with you in the sense that Vancouver has been there before, but I'm a little biased here. When I was 10 years old, I went to Bob Hartley's hockey camp. Okay. So got to stick with my old coach, you know. Got to stick with him. He's done a great job with Calgary. So I'm going to go with Calgary advancing there. So we have the next round matchup. You have Winnipeg, Vancouver. I have Anaheim, Calgary. Complete flips for both of us. Who gets out of that Winnipeg-Vancouver series?
I'm going to take Winnipeg. You know, I think that they've got the pieces to really cause trouble for some teams. If they can find the goal scoring and get consistent goaltending, I don't think they're a team anybody really wants to play.
So Winnipeg on to the Western Conference Final in Nick's bracket. I'm going to take Anaheim and Calgary. I'm going to take Anaheim just because basically what you said before with Vancouver. I think Calgary gets over the hump with Vancouver, but Anaheim, if they get through that first hurdle, it starts to become okay, we can do this type situation, and they have the talent to get through there. So I'm having Anaheim get past Calgary there. So you have Winnipeg in one side of the West Final. I have Anaheim in one side of the West Final. We both have the same matchup on the other side, and I wanted to wait to get to this one because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are hoping this series happens with St. Louis and Chicago. You know what happened last year. Blues get out to that 2-0 series lead, and then the Blackhawks, I believe it was Brent Seabrook, basically decapitated David Backes, and the whole series shifted from there.
Whole thing changed.
How does it play out this time?
You know, it's going to be another great series, I think. You know, every game that they've played this year have been close games, and again, I think the Hawks just have a little bit too much, and not only in terms of talent but experience. St. Louis going to have a rookie goaltender in net, Jake Allen, so granted he'll gain some confidence from getting through the first series, but playing Chicago is a whole different animal. So I just think the Hawks have a little bit too much. Again, if Patrick Kane is Patrick Kane, I just don't think anybody in the West can beat him 4 times in 7 games.
It's fair. I mean, it's hard to argue against that. I'm going to, though, because I'm probably not going to get a whole lot of support on this one, but I think the Blues would beat the Hawks. I'm a big believer in the whole revenge factor and having that second chance, and they will have a second chance, at least in my bracket, because I have them going head-to-head in the second round. So I think St. Louis gets the best of Chicago there. Maybe a 7-game series. Home ice may play a role there, although we know Chicago fans travel well. So Scott Trade would be flooded with red and white for that series. But so you have Chicago and Winnipeg in the West Finals. I have Anaheim, St. Louis. Who's getting through?
The Hawks. You know, again, I just don't think anybody in the West necessarily just has enough to beat them 4 times in 7 games. They've got the experience, the talent, you know, and the team's getting broken up after this year also, likely due to salary cap. So I think I think those guys are really going to want to get one here in their last chance for maybe the next year or 2 or 3.
Right. Okay, so you have the Chicago Blackhawks, Tampa Bay Lightning in the Stanley Cup Final. I'm going to pick the St. Louis Blues to get past the Anaheim Ducks. I think that once they get that monkey off their back of beating Chicago, they start to think, okay, we are good. We can do this. And Anaheim obviously going to be in the same situation going into that West Final, but I think Chicago, maybe top to bottom, has a little bit more talent and I think a better coach in Ken Hitchcock than Bruce Boudreau. So I'm going to have the Rangers and the Blues. You have the Lightning and the Blackhawks. Who wins the Stanley Cup?
You know, that's a tough question. It's hard for me to pick against the Hawks in 4 games. I think Tampa's got a forward group that could really give the Hawks D some trouble, though. They've had some issues there on the back end this year. So I think that's going to be a great series, and I think I might have to give a slight edge to Tampa, unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say it. You know, I just think that Steven Stamkos is one of the super-duper stars in the league, and I think it's his time to come to the forefront here in the playoffs.
All right, so the Tampa Bay Lightning, Nick Fabbrini's pick to win the Stanley Cup. I'm going to go with, and as much as it pains you to pick Tampa, it may pain me even more to pick the New York Rangers, but I'm not going to. Just kidding. I'm picking the St. Louis Blues to win the Stanley Cup. They have never won one before. I did look this up today. Last time they played in the Stanley Cup Final was from the famous Bobby Orr goal in overtime, tripped in the air. So it's been a long time. Pictures were black and white the last time the St. Louis Blues were in the final. But they're my pick to win the Stanley Cup. Nick's going with the Lightning. We appreciate you watching. For Nick, I'm Josh, and we'll see you next time.